In shocking news, the FBI issued a bulletin warning of a dirty bomb threat and increasing calls for civil war in the wake of the Mar-a-Lago raid. While former agent and GOP rep Brian Fitzpatrick says agency warned him that his life was in danger due to threats from Trump supporters. Yeah, okay, I think this country is going to implode. I was commenting on a Facebook meme earlier, and I wanted to say the Ukraine Gate scandal is going to go down as one of the biggest political scandals in this country's history. And then I thought about it and I was like, okay, well, the problem is half the country doesn't know. And if they do, they don't care. And so, okay, well, it'll probably go down as one of the biggest scandals of our lifetime, but I guess only among people on the right who know and care. To put it simply, the FBI is coming out with this fear of civil war and all that stuff, increasing calls for civil war, I should clarify, and warning of a dirty bomb, which is, come on, a dirty bomb. And the thing is, as they're doing this, you actually have a leftist terrorist organization claiming credit for several acts of terrorism. It's actually quite incredible. This is the state of this country. But I will tell you, my friends on the right, when y'all say things like the right's going to win the Civil War because we have guns. Okay, first of all, nobody wins a civil war. It's just not the case. I mean, to clarify, obviously in a conflict between belligerents, someone comes out on top. But my point is, this idea that war can be won, obviously in a technical standard, what I mean to say is the destruction, the negative impacts are so widespread and so, I don't know, just it's going to get so bad that in the end, you might say you came out on top, but you are set back. I mean, people lose their lives. It's nothing to joke about or strive toward. And there are accelerationists who really want this to happen. But you know why I think that is? I think the accelerationists and people like this group, Jane's Revenge or whatever they're calling themselves, they do not know. I've talked to many a leftist, and I have said to them, I will pay your travel to any one of these locations in the world that you often talk about. Notably, like, Israel, for instance. And I mean it with all sincerity. I was talking to a guy once, and I said, I will cover your trip to Israel. We'll film it. It'll be really cool. What we'll do is we'll film you. You'll explain your positions. You'll talk about what you think and why. We will fly you to Israel to experience what it's like, in the country and talk to locals. And then we'll film you after the fact. How do you feel about it? For some reason, every single time they always back down. And I think the issue is my goal there isn't to prove them wrong. It's to see how they think about things and then how do they think after about them, because maybe they're right. But for some reason, they just won't do it. They never want to do it. The FBI is coming out. And they're saying that we got to be worried about the Betsy Ross flag and the Gonzalez flag and the Gadsden flag. The Gadsden flag is a license plate in several states. And they ignore stuff like this that's in your face, overt, and happening right now. So, to those on the right who think, we got all the guns here, they have the institutions who have more guns and more powerful guns. So no, you don't want a civil war. And let me just stress again to these whack job leftists. Some of them do. They do understand the violence and death they will bring through this conflict, and they want it. Because I know this because I've talked to them. Here, and I'll explain this to you. In it, they mention short, strongly worded, quote, communiques. Because they're playing. It's cosplay. They're playing revolutionary. They're putting on costumes and they're like, I'm going to issue a communique. Bro, it's called a memo. It's called a letter. It's called a blog. A communique. Oh, deep underground revolutionaries. Well, these people say words like that because they fantasize about being Robespierre. Literally. There was one guy at Occupy Wall Street, apparently, said he just really wanted to be Robespierre. And it's funny because, Robespierre, he killed tons of people, and then they killed him. And it was brutal and gruesome. The funny thing about the French Revolution was how all of these factions just started killing each other. They were unified in the revolution, right? And then they're all sitting there screaming at each other like, you're the threat, because everybody was vying for power and everybody was worried everybody else was going to kill everybody else. So eventually they started killing everybody else. And then eventually they were like, okay, the guy who was chopping everybody's heads off, Robespierre, kill him, and his friend Danton. But it doesn't work out well. The FBI claiming that there's increasing calls for civil war. But my question is, are you talking about what the left is doing? Oh, okay. A bunch of right-wingers are posting dumb memes. Am I going to cry about it? Or am I going to be concerned that where I live, not even that far away, I believe there were 2 crisis pregnancy centers that were attacked. I think one was firebombed. Yeah. The Daily Mail reports the FBI has warned of a dirty bomb threat and increasing calls for civil war after agents raided Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. The Bureau said in a leaked memo they had received an uptick in violent threats on social media following the morning search last week. The chilling note revealed thugs planned to put a dirty bomb in front of the agency's headquarters amid a suggested armed rebellion. Yeah, well, please, for the love of all that is holy, can we go nowhere near that? Can we retreat back to arguing over sports teams? And I don't know. So I was talking about this meme just a moment ago, and Ukraine Gate. But let me tell you the context of it. People are talking about all these Trump supporters said lock her up, and now they're not saying lock him up, but Donald Trump had classified documents. Allow me to break this one down for all of you quite simply. Hillary Clinton had 30,000 emails on a private server. These are public records that are property of the public, and about 110 of them, I believe, were classified, some as high as top secret. Hillary Clinton had the server purged with software called BleachBit, which attempted to completely eradicate records of those emails, and her staff even smashed phones with hammers to prevent people from getting access to them. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. The FBI investigated rather calmly and formally and said there was no intent there, so there's no crime. Donald Trump, well, first let me say the president has broad declassification powers. According to PolitiFact, the president is the arbiter of what is classified. I mean, think about it for 2 seconds. You're the president. You get, this is top secret classified. We have nuclear bases in these places. You now have to go negotiate with Vladimir Putin about where his military bases are. Let's go back in time and say Gorbachev or something, Reagan. Is he going to be like, I can't tell you what we're going to sorry, it's classified. I can't negotiate on behalf of this country. No, there's no supreme authority. The president is the guy. He says, okay, let's negotiate. We want to shut down nuclear facilities. We don't want these weapons. We've got some here. We know you've got some there. Agree to shut them down. We'll shut ours down. Imagine if he couldn't because it was classified. I see you want to shut down those we know about. I can't tell you where ours are unless someone approves declassification. Who's going to approve it? We elected the president to be the president, the commander in chief to negotiate this stuff. So when Donald Trump has classified documents, he's the guy who chooses whether they're classified or not. What's the issue? Now, it gets better. The search warrant was broad for all documents during the presidency of Donald Trump. That's not specific. Some have argued it violates the Fourth Amendment because it's overly broad. It needs to be narrowed down to what you are seeking. Additionally, considering, I believe it was Kevin Kleinsmith was convicted of altering an email to justify spying on Donald Trump, nobody believes this is legitimate. I hope that's clarification for the people who don't understand why there is outrage over the FBI raid on Donald Trump and why people wanted Hillary Clinton to be investigated. Because Trump, this is like the 4th major scandal that appears to be fabricated. I mean, seriously, I'll tell you what I think this is all about. I don't think they're going to indict Trump, but I don't know for sure. I don't want to say that my, the probability I'm seeing here is like a 100% chance they don't indict. I mean, maybe they do. My prediction right now, I should say this, my speculation is that they don't want to indict Trump. What they want to do is just have this story percolate through the media that Donald Trump is a criminal, that he did this. Why? What are they saying? Because he wasn't cooperating, and they raided his home and they found classified documents. So in the minds of the public, it's confirmed he's guilty. Now, it may turn out the classified documents are declassified by the president and there's no crime committed. But that's not what the media is saying, right? The media is saying civil war and dirty bombs from the right wing. No, to be fair, The Atlantic is reporting on Jane's revenge. But the FBI isn't taking action. And if they are, where are they? Now, I want to be reasonable and fair. I know that there are people in the FBI who are legit. I would probably argue majority of them are. But there are bosses. There's two big factors at play here. One, the leadership is heavily politicized. That's an issue. Two, they're compartmentalized. So we talk about how Donald Trump had this locker or whatever that was locked and had documents in it. The FBI apparently put a lock on it. Rudy Giuliani says it was their lock. Well, it was reported by NBC. They said lock them up, these documents. And then several months later, they come and bash the lock off and take the documents. Now, how does that make sense? A lot of people are acting like it was a setup. No, it's compartmentalization. The FBI agents in the office that said, hey, secure these documents are different from the ones who went in and raided Trump. Just so happens, Epstein's lawyer, who became a judge, is the guy who signed off on an overly broad warrant. Really, really amazing stuff. Here's what I think the Democrats' goal is with all of this. DHS Bulletin. Civil War and dirty bombs. From 538, Americans are pretty concerned with political polarization. Yeah, but mostly Democrats. Now, look, around 23% of Republicans say that political extremism or polarization is an important issue. It is around 33% of Democrats. But take a look at this. Immigration matters way more to Republicans, 32%. And budget and debt way more to Republicans at 28%. And election security and fraud is 19. It's trailing political extremism. Among Democrats, political polarization is the third highest. Crime and gun violence is the highest. And inflation is at 40%. You're not going to win on inflation. So what do? I think the Democrats, or at least elements of the DOJ that are heavily favoring Democrats, are looking at this and saying, we need to rile people up to get them to go vote. And how do we do it? Political extremism and polarization. Mix in a little bit of that gun violence. You get a story about some crackpot who goes to an FBI office in Cincinnati and tries using a nail gun to penetrate a bulletproof glass door or something like that. Not all that bright. Tragic story, psychotic. The dude ends up getting killed in a cornfield. I don't know if he was killed in the cornfield, but he's in a cornfield shooting at people. Gun violence and political extremism, that will be weaponized by the Democrats ad nauseum throughout this cycle. That's why I say, I'm like, this guy must have been a Democrat. I know he wasn't. He was very clearly in his postings pro-Trump. He, for some reason, made a post about watching Viva Fry. And it's like the weirdest thing because Viva is such like a moderate legal commentator. He's like not hyper partisan in any capacity. But anyway, this guy, many people think it was a false flag. They're saying they don't believe it. Well, I hate to tell you guys, but look, the simple solution is this guy is just a Trump supporter who snapped. That's it. There are a lot of people who are at the brink. And this is why we have to be adamant and say, do not engage in violence. It's wrong. It's always been wrong. But it's been the act of desperation for so many. I'll tell you why it's bad, and it's quite simple. We are months away from Republicans gaining control of the House and the Senate in what is supposed to be the misery index predicted decimation of the Democratic Party. All indicators right now suggest Democrats are going to get defeated handily. Unless something like this happens, which is perfect for two of the biggest issues that Democrats care about. Gun violence and political extremism. How convenient for the media apparatus. It's great timing. And that's why if there was going to be a conspiracy and I had to believe in one, I'd argue the FBI did the raid to try and rile up Trump supporters. Not that the Trump supporter himself was secretly working for the FBI. No. And I got to be honest. The reality is I think it's more conspiratorial that the FBI is not politicized than to think they are. But I think the simple solution is Merrick Garland is heavily biased. I'll put it this way. This is the problem with conspiracies. And I'm not saying you don't have to you don't have to disbelieve or believe. It's just my thoughts on it. Merrick Garland is biased. The Republicans took away his Supreme Court chances. He gets put in the AG. His view of all of this, that these people are bad and evil, his actions will be directed in that direction. He doesn't need to be told, go after them and destroy them so the Democrats might win. He's sitting there going like, these Republicans are evil. I have to stop them. So there's no conspiracy. It's just partisanship. And it's hyperpolarization getting worse. This is a guy who would not go after the people who illegally protested in front of Supreme Court justices' homes. I bet he's salty about it. He's like, that was my seat that Brett Kavanaugh is sitting in. Like, it's Gorsuch probably. But, he's probably thinking that. He's like, oh, you're getting protested? Well, I was supposed to be there, so you think I'm going to defend you? It's not a conspiracy. It's bias. And then when this happens, he's like, Donald Trump and the Republicans. Those guys, I know something about them. I better investigate. They did something wrong. Just like the left screams Donald Trump derangement syndrome, Merrick Garland's got the same issue. You don't need a conspiracy when people believe this stuff already. Let me make it simple. People think behind the scenes. These Democrats are going like, I know it's evil and wrong, but we must do it anyway. What they're actually doing is, we are right and just and must stop Donald Trump. It's a cult. Okay, so here's the thing about a conspiracy. Conspiracy implies they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they're coordinating it. What I'm saying is it's much simpler than that. They're in a cult, they're biased, and they can't see outside of their blinders. That's why they do it. Now, of course, Democrats, consultants, and media are going to weaponize what's happening for political gain. For political gain, and for who? Who is the political gain for? Well, it ain't the hard left. No, seriously. Jacobin reports, the Democratic base keeps getting richer and whiter. And it's been the case for 6 years now. A startling poll shows how rapidly the Democrats are trading away their traditional multiracial working class base for white, highly educated voters. And the shift is causing a change to the party's political priorities as a result. I got to tell you what's so funny about this is I just watched a lecture on Revelation in the Bible, because a lot of people keep saying things are coming. And I just say, I read that, and then read Revelation and watch a lecture on it. And you're going to be like, it's so weird. Not that I think it's actually happening. I don't. I just think it's interesting how history rhymes. And, I'll put it this way. In part of the lecture I was watching, it was explained by the theologian that while it may be prophecy, a prediction of the future, or the prophecy meaning the word of God, that's what he said, it may actually just be a reflection upon what was already happening to them. Similar things had occurred with the oppressive government and its expansion, and the prediction was that similar things would happen again. Now, it depends on who you are and what you believe, but I actually, reading it, I was like, it's really fascinating, because my view of it is not that it will happen, like it's a prophecy of what's to come. It's a reminder or a statement about what had happened. Meaning, this is a person who was seeing things happen and writing down, like, if this stuff happens, like, this is what you'll see. And you can argue it was metaphorical or it was prescriptive. You could argue that it was using metaphor from the Bible. In fact, one guy said that the symbols of Revelation are just so you understand the concepts, because these symbols appear in the Bible itself. Not that it was discussing magical things occurring. I don't know. I'm not even Christian or religious. I just think a group of people watching things happen, write down what happened, and then say, this will happen again. That, to me, sounds like, yeah, that's literally what does happen. I mean, if you go back and read all these novels like Animal Farm, 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, even Atlas Shrugged, elements of these things are all happening. Why? Each one of these people could see a piece of the whole, but not the whole itself. So Atlas Shrugged, right? You got Ayn Rand being like, all the rich people are going to leave. Yeah, they will. Industry will flee when you get oppressive government. You've got 1984, oppressive government. You've got Brave New World, pills, video games, dopamine, stimulation. You've got Fahrenheit 451, people saying, censor this, ban this. That's where we're going. You got a little bit of V for Vendetta mixed in there. It's all of them at once, happening right before our eyes. The issue, I suppose, is the DHS bulletin itself is indicative of a civil war. Yeah, I know. I got to do it again. I know I mentioned it several times last week, but shout out to Joe Rogan, who said that at first he thought I was crazy years ago, 3 years ago, when I said, I think we're heading towards civil war. And he said, come on, calm down. The thing is, Joe, as a comedian, doesn't read the things I read. He's not in the thick of the fray, talking to people on the ground. I'll put it this way. I'm not surprised Joe didn't believe me at first. I have been on the ground in civil conflict, precursor to civil war, and war. I was in Ukraine during the major protests in end of 2013 into 2014. It eventually turned into what people referred to as a civil war, but it was mostly the Donbass region. Eventually, it was a separatist movement, people in the country called it. Now it's full-blown war. I watched that. I talked to people. I heard what they had to say, and I said, wow. I was in Turkey during Gezi Park. Didn't turn into a civil war, but I was I've been in Brazil. I've been in a bunch of countries where I've seen these uprisings, and I've seen them peter out, and I've seen them escalate. So here's what happens. I see Venezuela and how crazy it's gotten there. I was in Venezuela. I had to flee the country. Ukraine is probably the best example. I look at the polarization, and I said, why in these countries did things calm down? And why in these countries did things get crazier? Now I take a look at what's happening in the U.S. And I'm like, these are not the things that precipitated things getting better. These are the things that precipitated things getting worse. I read the news. I see what they're saying. And when the FBI comes out and keeps screaming, the right, blah, 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 when what's actually happening is the left, you know, you are ramping up towards civil war. Now, look, I understand you just had a crazy right-wing dude go to an FBI office and do some crazy stuff. It's horrifying. But I will make this point. When we see stuff from the right like this, it's targeting government. I mean, it often is. The ADL makes reference to separatists and all that stuff, and they're targeting government. The left targets the people. That's the crazy thing. Now, the left has targeted government as well. We had that guy I think it was in Tacoma, who tried firebombing an ICE facility, for sure, and they protest cops. But we see a ton of terrorism against working class Americans and the people. The Summer of Love riots, that was all lower and middle income people. Jane's Revenge, they're targeting local charities. It's all bad. I don't want anyone to do it. You had January 6th. Most people who entered the Capitol on January 6th, this is a fact. The doors were open for them, but many people, a lot of them, I think hundreds, fought cops and beat their way in, and they should be charged and arrested and held accountable. So it can happen. It does. But it's a tendency on the left and an exception on the right. The right typically does not engage in this stuff. When they do, it can be bad. But the left is doing it all the time. The FBI warns the right because they don't care about you. Think about it. It's not a conspiracy. I mean, it may be, but my point is this. Why is the FBI so worried about the right? Because the right's pointing the finger at them and the left isn't. The left is cheering them on. So, of course, they're like, the right wing is scary. Yeah. Well, I imagine, unfortunately, that things will escalate. So I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.